Welcome to our new series, Diseases of History. So let's start out with one of the best-known zoonotic diseases of all time, rabies. And unfortunately with the situation in Chicago, rabies has become incredibly relevant once again. Now there are other creators out there who have made far better videos than I could on the situation in Chicago. Go check them out. I recommend Dr. Kate Alucard. They're a pathology resident with a background in public health. They talk a lot about public health, One Health, and intersectionality in vet med. They're an awesome resource. Now rabies unfortunately has been relevant for a long time. There's still an estimated 59,000 rabies cases in humans globally each year, and they are invariably fatal. Most of these tend to be in underserved communities in Africa and Asia. There are about 1 to 3 cases in humans in the United States per year. Only about 30 people total have survived once symptoms present. Now there is a post-exposure protocol for humans as well as a vaccine to prevent it. And not to downplay its cultural impact, because rabies is also the reason we have a lot of that zombie literature and zombie pop culture. Naturally, we're terrified of a virus that can drive someone into a violent, inhuman rage. But let's talk about how it changed human history. Now, rabies is one of our oldest known diseases. The first record of it goes back to Mesopotamia, where the Codex of Eshnunna, written in about 1930 BCE, dictates that the owner of a dog with symptoms of rabies should take measures to prevent bites, and if another person's bitten, the owner's going to be heavily fined. The name Lyssavirus, the group which rabies belongs to, comes from the minor Greek goddess Lyssa. Lyssa is also known for driving Heracles into a violent rage. The name rabies comes from the Roman equivalent, who's fittingly just named rabies. Now, in Greek times, the flower alyssum was used to treat rabies, which is where it gets its name. And if your name is Alyssa, that's where your name comes from. Later on, rabies was thought to be caused by a worm that lived in the base of the tongue. Now, this wormy-looking fibrous band of tissue on the ventral aspect of the tongue doesn't actually cause rabies, but we named it the Lyssa anyway. And sometimes in an attempt to prevent rabies, they would cut and remove the lingual frenulum, which they thought would get rid of the worm. Rabies is also responsible for the first confirmed epizootic recorded in the Americas with a massive outbreak in 1768 in Boston. And later on in the 1800s, the French would use the St. Hubert's key to cauterize wounds following dog bites. They also would brand dogs with an image of the key to help prevent rabies. Now, unfortunately, none of these folk treatments and preventatives really worked. In fact, the only one that really did was minimizing contact with rabid dogs. So, good on you, Mesopotamians. But throughout much of human history, rabies was something that people feared, and rightfully so. It's an incurable disease that drove the victim into a violent fury. Now, in the 1800s, Louis Pasteur started to advance germ theory of disease, and this also led to the development of vaccines. First for chicken cholera, which was later named Pasteurella multocida in his honor, then later anthrax and erysipelas. And so in the 1880s, he started working on a vaccine for rabies. Now, he didn't know it, but this would be his first viral disease. Viruses, of course, wouldn't be discovered for another decade at least, and this was dangerous work. You'd have to get close enough to a rabid dog to collect saliva, although I hate to think of the folks who were going after that lingual frenulum, because this was an era before anesthesia. Nonetheless, working alongside Emile Roux, Pasteur developed a vaccine for rabies. He did this by inoculating rabbits with the rabies virus. He would then harvest the nervous tissue and let it dry to weaken the virus. And he would later test the efficacy for this vaccine in dogs. However, in July 1885, a 9-year-old boy named Joseph Meister was bitten by a rabid dog. Now, Pasteur, who was not a licensed physician at this time, agreed to attempt to treat the boy. This did put him in some legal risk because, he wasn't a licensed physician. He was working alongside licensed physicians, but this was a big jump to a human trial. Over the course of 11 days, Meister got 13 inoculations. 3 months later, he still didn't have rabies. And this was the first successful prevention of rabies. He would then go on to administer this treatment to over 350 people with rabies exposure, which was fairly successful as long as those inoculations were administered before the patient developed symptoms. Now today, preventative vaccines in animals for rabies is routine. In rabies endemic countries, they are often required by law. And in the United States, since the start of mass vaccination for animals in 1947, both human and domestic animal rabies cases have dropped off dramatically. Nonetheless, it's vital that we remember that this is a hard-won victory, and frankly, the battle's not over.